we had made the act of being Hindu so defensive that nobody even wanted to talk about it, right? And what a toxic environment that is. For a long period of Sikh history, Hindus, the first male child of every Hindu family, would be sent to the Khalsa to become a Sikh, right? So this was always a tradition. Now extremists want to hide these facts, not talk about it, but they can't be hidden. जो भेदभाव है वो हम में है हमारे देश में. The division is we have created these ugly divisions. Yes. To the rest of the world, we are India. When I was beginning to think about writing this book again, people were like, "Why do you want to write about political Hinduism? It's so controversial." And I was like, "Look, it is the story of India's present. Why shouldn't we write a book on this?" And I felt that story was not being told adequately. It was all very partisan. One person said only good things, one person said only bad things. And I was like, as a historian, surely there is a middle ground path somewhere which is the truth.
Yeah. All the stories of Hindus, gods and goddesses that we find in the Puranas are of warfare. You, in your book, have mentioned about the invasions, about the attacks that happened from Afghanistan and beyond that, Gauri, Ghazni, how the Rajputs tried to repel that. Why did the modern history that we are reading, there is very less emphasis on the martial acumen of a race, and how did non-violence and peace became the primary philosophy of India and the leaders?
All of this actually, Raghav, comes from the colonial period. They don't want us to remember anything that is martial about us.
RSS as an organization is very misinterpreted, or people really do not know about it, and usually people want to disassociate themselves if and when they are talking even about it.
Even Nathuram Godse never said he wanted a Hindu country. When you're taught history in school, you go straight from Gauri, Ghazni, Mughals, British. But that's not how history happened. Between Gauri and Ghazni, there are nearly 300 years. How is it that those 300 years existed? Because those 300 years Indians were resisting. We are never taught that.
If the BJP's ideology is rooted in Hindutva and taken from the political Hinduism, then what is the ideology of Congress?
If you read early Savarkar and early Nehru, if you read Hindutva and Discovery of India, their conception of the nation is near identical. Mopla riots, women, children have been massacred, and Gandhiji is saying, if a Hindu just forgave, it would be fine. But the fact is, this has been very disturbing, and for the people who have suffered to hear this from somebody they consider a saint. Nehru never agreed with Gandhi on Pakistan because Patel and Nehru actually went against Gandhi. That's why when partition happened, Gandhiji was completely isolated.
Hi guys, this is Raghav here, and in this episode of Discovery of an Author, we have someone very amazing. His name is Hindol Sengupta. So Hindol Sengupta is a multiple award-winning author and historian of 12 acclaimed books. He has been a columnist for more than a decade and has been vice president at Invest India, the National Investment Promotion Agency of the Government of India, under the Ministry of Commerce, and editor-at-large of the Indian edition of the Fortune magazine. This episode with Hindol was brilliant, and we deep dived and discussed his latest book, Soul and Sword, which was on the history of political Hinduism. And in this episode, you will be absolutely blown away with the facts that Hindol shared on the origins of the political Hinduism. What is Hindutva? What was the role of Savarkar? What was the role of Gandhi, Nehru, Ambedkar, Aurobindo, and many other leaders who shaped the India as we know? You'll also get to know that the origin of political Hinduism lies in the Vijayanagar Empire, in the warfare of Shivaji Maharaj, and in many such historical figures. A very powerful episode with amazing facts, unfiltered. Hindol was he just unleashed the facts, the figures that is already written in his book Soul and Sword, and that is out there in the public. Stay tuned, watch this episode till the end to be blown away by what Hindol has to say, and I'm sure you'll discover some amazing facts about the Indian history that you were not aware of beforehand. Watch this episode, be blown away, be amazed by its content. And guys, again, a humble request. I humbly request you to please subscribe, please share, and please like. This is the only way in which we can grow and to get more such authors and get you such amazing content. It's a humble request. We really need your support over here. Enjoy this episode. Thank you. Hindol, thank you so much. It's a pleasure being in your house.
So kind of you to come.
And I tell you, the moment we entered the house, there were two things which really caught my attention. One was the music, the Arunachalam music. That was really soothing. And even my team members were saying it was very, very, very nice. And just the books. Just look at the books that you have.
I have nothing else but books.
That is my idle life.
And of course, the chant you were talking about, I felt that chant to be so peaceful and it really means something to me. It is, of course, as you correctly pointed out, it is the chant of Ramana Maharishi of Arunachala. It just says something to you without any words, right? The best kind of communication. So I'm very happy that you came home. Welcome.
Thank you for inviting. And as I was telling you, when the recording did not start, that I am a fanboy. I want this to be on the record. I had waited for this meeting for 9 years because I genuinely believe in your philosophy, in your ideology, the way you write books, the subjects that you pick up. And I wish that you just continue to write books because I feel you're a very brave writer. Your research is amazing. The topics that you pick up, people are scared of writing about them. As you rightly said, and as I know from online and other people know that your book being Hindu was very difficult for you to find publishers for that book.
It's true.
Because people were they did not want to associate themselves with the word Hindu at all.
So, some publishers told me we'll publish it if you make it being Indian.
Oh, is it? Yeah. But I'm glad you did that. It got published because then I think a lot of such topics and a lot of these people started writing about this thing very bravely.
I still remember one publisher told me, how can you write a book like this? On what basis are you writing a book like this? It's like, I'm a practicing Hindu. Come from a Hindu family. I've been a Hindu all my life. What do you mean? But she was not happy. People forget 10, 12 years ago, 15 years ago, India was a very different place. And there was a lot of very strange behaviors and toxicity which existed. But by the grace of God, it got published. And I'm so glad you read it.
Yeah. I read it in 2016 and it was very revelatory. I'll tell you very honest. I will tell you very honestly. When I read the book and when I saw the title, Hindol, it kind of validated my faith. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know.
When you hear or see someone as prolific as you, who knows how to write, who knows how to research, who knows his work, write a book on a topic which is associated with the majority of the religion of India, it somewhere validates it.
But think about it, what you're telling me, I kid you not, since the time that book has come out, 10 years have gone by, almost every week I get some message on social media or a mail from somebody from different parts of the world. In India, of course, a lot of people, but different parts of the world, telling me exactly this.
Yes.
That I felt that, okay, somebody was saying what I felt, right? Yes. But think about it. We had made the act of being Hindu so defensive that nobody even wanted to talk about it, right? And what a toxic environment that is. We're in a very different world today, but we shouldn't forget that experience. And we should remember the lessons from that experience.
Absolutely. And it opens a gateway. Second most important thing, it opens a gateway. It gives confidence, it validates the faith, and people can then follow suit.
That's right.
Hindol, we need that. We need people to follow suit. Ki acha. It gives me also confidence to do something like that, right? So I think that is pretty incredible. And one more thing I'd like to tell you. How I also came to know that this book has now picked up really well and people are talking about it. I remember, I really don't recount the incident, but some reporter asked Sonam Kapoor,
Yeah.
Something about Hindu, some controversy, and she's like, if you really want to know what is true Hinduism, read Hindol Sengupta's Being Hindu.
You know, very interestingly, now that you mention it, I have to thank Sonam, of course, for this. A reporter sent me a photograph. You know those airport photographs of Bollywood stars? So there was a photograph of Sonam Kapoor where she was walking into the airport carrying a book. And it was Being Hindu.
Yes.
And then she wrote to me saying, look, I really liked your book. And I wrote to her saying, this is amazing. I'm so happy that you read it. And, you know, and I used to be in New York in those days. And, you know, then Sonam Kapoor was visiting New York and we met actually. And we had a long conversation about her own interest in Hinduism, you know, all the things that she was doing. And it was a great conversation. So, I mean, this is just, how should I put it? This is, I mean, I couldn't have engineered any of this, right? All of this just happened.
Yeah. And then after being Hindu, your line of books and your line of work has been equally inspiring. You have written on Patel. You have written on Swami Vivekananda.
That's right.
You have written on Guru Gobind Singh.
Yes.
I don't know if a lot of people know about that, but you've written a book on Guru Gobind Singh.
Yeah.
Was it fictional or was it historical fiction?
So it was historical fiction. I wanted to give it a narrative. See, when we write classic narrative non-fiction, we are not really doing dialogue, right? Whereas Guru Gobind Singh Ji's story was so rich with things he had said, dialogues he had, that famous letter he wrote to Aurangzeb and so on and so forth. So therefore, I wanted to bring that sense of dialogue. And therefore, it was best done as historical fiction.
So Zafarnama.
Zafarnama.
Oh, that was it is just so brilliant that a man could write. And I think those exchanges were in Farsi.
That's right.
I think Guru Gobind Singh was also writing back in Farsi, right?
And you know, it gave me an opportunity. You know, a lot of extremists don't mention this today. Guru Gobind Singh Ji wrote Chandi Diwar. You know.
Yes. Yes.
Who was Chandi Diwar referring to?
Yes.
To Mother Chandi.
Yes.
Chandi, you know, Mata Chandi, right? I mean, Durga, so to speak.
Yes. Yes.
And the Sikhs went to battle, as did the Marathas. You know, the Marathas used to say Jai Bhavani.
Bhavani.
Right? Really looking at the goddess, right? As a source of inspiration. You know, Ma Durga, who is of course called by various names in various parts of India. All of this we have forgotten, right?
Yes.
Very sadly, we have forgotten all of this. In fact, I was recently at the Kamakhya temple.
It's in Odisha, right?
Assam. In Assam, one of the great Shakti Peeths of India.
Yes.
And there I realized that actually Guru Tegh Bahadur Singh Ji had actually written a letter to the trustees of that time of Kamakhya temple. I couldn't find the letter. Hopefully one day I have made a request to some people in Assam if they can find the letter to show it to me. But we don't know these things.
But the context was?
I think he was writing to them either offering them security,
Could be possible.
right? Or, you know, there could be other details and so on and so forth, but probably offering them security, right? And I really wanted to see that letter. But I think that letter exists and somebody somewhere has that letter. And, you know, one day I'm sure I'll be able to see it.
And I feel that the whomsoever has the letter, they don't want it to be out. Because it can cause a lot of riots.
In India, who knows, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But look, I mean, this is no surprise. I mean, you know, extremists have hidden all of these things. But if you read a lot of, you know, Sikh writing, right? Religious, ritual writing, it is replete with references to Hindu gods and goddesses.
100%.
For a long period of Sikh history, Hindus, the first male child of every Hindu family, would be sent to the Khalsa to become a Sikh, right? So this was always a tradition.
Yes.
Now extremists want to hide these facts, not talk about it, but they can't be hidden, right? Yeah. At the end of the day, remember, even Sikhism says Ek Omkar.
Yes.
What is Omkar?
What is Omkar?
Right? So this bond between Hinduism and Sikhism, which really are sister faiths, intertwined with one another. You know, my mother often, I mean, now she's not well, but when she was well, she would often go to a Gurdwara. You know, because she felt great, you know, peace, and she loved the atmosphere, the divinity there. I always say this, and I want to say this on your show too. when the partition of India happened, obviously the country, the geography got divided. But it is very sad in our society, Raghav. What we proceeded to do is also divide all our cultural treasures, including our heroes. What happened because of that? The Sikhs belong only to a bunch of people in Punjab.
And it was specific geography.
It was geography, and all their gurus and traditions only belong to them. So when I wrote the book on Guru Gobind Singh Ji, a lot of people, my friends in Chandigarh, said, "Oh, how did you think of writing that?" When I wrote the book on Sardar Patel Sahab, a lot of people in Ahmedabad asked me, "How did you write a book on Patel?" But this is ridiculous.
Absolutely.
Guru Gobind Singh Ji and Guru Nanak Ji and Sardar Patel and Rabindranath Tagore and Satyajit Ray, they are all part of one collective India story.
They are our leaders.
They are our leaders. They are as much yours as they are of mine, as somebody in Ahmedabad, in Chennai, wherever they are in India, right? वो भारत के नेता है, वो भारत के idols हैं.
Absolutely.
But we have divided all of these things.
Absolutely.
Right? So, Lashit Borphukong can only be admired by the Assamese.
Yeah.
No one else can say anything about it.
Yeah. Same with the Cholas.
Same with the Cholas, only the Tamils.
And Shivaji.
And Shivaji Maharaj, only the Marathas. This is wrong. They are
Absolutely.
all Indian icons and heroes. And certainly before our divided time, for most of Indian history, people always thought of them as, one united Bharatiya hero, so to speak. So we should break this, and we should start again thinking about how all of this is a collective treasure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think same with the language. So when I used to go to Chennai,
Yes.
I used to speak the converse in English.
Yes.
It's a tragedy with the locals over there.
Yeah.
And whenever the mention of Hindi versus Tamil used to
Yeah.
come up, I used to tell them, "You guys, Tamil is my language also."
Of course it
Because I'm
is.
Indian. It's an Indian language.
Tell me, Raghav, that great tradition of Sangam literature, does it not belong to you?
Yeah.
Can it not belong to you? The Cholas for nearly 1500 years were the great maritime force, not only of India, of the world. They sent, if you look at the map, the Chola maritime map, they send expeditions across Asia.
Till Philippines as well.
Exactly, across Southeast Asia. Today, the historical battle between China and India in the Indian Ocean is that India says this is our ocean, because of Chola history. The Chinese say that they had an explorer called Zhang Yi who had these 9 great expeditions across the oceans, and therefore their history is also intertwined with this. So this is irretrievably belongs to all of us. We would be particularly foolish to say this only belongs to the Tamils and that only belongs to... And this is what's happening, right? I mean, China is thinking about how to build deep sea.
Yes.
Whereas we are fighting about, Hindi versus Tamil.
Absolutely.
And whether English should be used or not.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. It is impacting the country and the nation as a whole.
I agree.
And I think we can take a cue from how we have adopted the food culture. Now, dosa
Yeah.
is not just a South Indian thing.
Not at all.
We can learn from that, na?
घर घर पे
घर घर पे बनता है.
हाँ.
Chole bhature, paratha,
Exactly.
poha. This is now becoming Indian food.
Exactly.
It has evolved.
Exactly. And I'm so glad you mentioned all these food. Remember when the American multinationals were trying to change our breakfast habits
Oh, what
by
is it?
pushing, of course, for nearly a decade, by pushing cereals. Breakfast cereals at us. That is the only thing that will give you nutrition. Indian society fought back by saying, I don't need
Brilliant.
from your cereals. I get enough nutrition from my dosa and my poha and my idli and my paratha, whatever it is that I eat and have been eating for hundreds and hundreds of years in my country. It's freshly made.
Yes.
It's made with fresh vegetables.
And indigenous produce.
Indigenous produce, often using indigenous, millets and other kinds of, which is the best thing for you.
Yes, absolutely.
Right?
Seasonal.
Regional. Exactly.
And yet it is pan-India.
It's pan-India.
Similar, I think now that we are understanding the concept of pan-Indian movies.
Yeah.
And that I'm very glad that
Of
at
course.
least that divide is also going slowly
It
and
is.
slowly. Now I do not look at Prabhas or Ramcharan as
No.
Madrasis.
No.
Like how people used to call
Absolutely.
them. Very derogatory. but
They're
that
not
is how we
South
used to-
Indian
Yeah,
heroes.
they're pan-Indian.
They are Indian film
actors.
stars. right?
Absolutely. And I think collectively they have taken up this conscious decision
Yes.
for people to call them
Yeah.
Okay, we are pan-Indian. Don't call us Tollywood or Bollywood.
No, this is ridiculous. And what is Bollywood anyway? It's a term we invented by borrowing again from the West. There's a Hollywood, so we will be Bollywood. Why?
Absolutely.
It makes no sense. Satyajit Ray didn't sit and make films thinking, I am Collywood.
No.
That's ridiculous.
Absolutely
Right?
not.
He just made cinema, right?
The kind of cinema he wanted to.
The kind of cinema he wanted. And wherever in the world people liked cinema, enjoyed that cinema.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And even if we talk about more commercial directors, so to speak, Mani Ratnam doesn't sit in Chennai thinking, I will make films for Tamil Nadu.
No.
No, he just makes the cinema that he loves.
Yeah.
And that's enjoyed in the whole of the world.
Absolutely.
Right? So we have to, all this divide is within us.
Yes.
I was watching this lovely video of Indonesians who are visiting India.
Breakdancing wala?
No, the one they were singing Bollywood songs, Karan Johar's songs.
Okay.
And I thought to myself, think about it. All these people in different parts of the world, they look at these movies and think this is India. They're not thinking this is Bombay, this is Chennai, this is Calcutta. No. To them, this is India. जो भेदभाव है, वो हम में है हमारे देश में. The division is, we have created these ugly divisions.
Yes.
To the rest of the world, we are India.
Absolutely.
Right? And it is so tragic. Actually, if the rest of the world was dividing us and we were united, it would be better.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Here it is the reverse. The rest of the world sees us as one.
Yeah.
We have created and manufactured these divisions within our country, which is really toxic. And I really feel with our generation, we should end this nonsense.
Yeah, end this nonsense. And I think it's high time that we start blaming these invasions and British rule in Mughal. It's enough of that. You can't blame everything. Oh, it was an inheritance of loss that we got. I think we have to
75 years have gone, right?
Yeah.
It is true that colonialism did great damage to us. It is true that Islamic invasions did great damage to us. But at the end of the day, all of this is history.
Yes.
Today, there is a present moment.
Yes.
Where nobody's invading us, nobody's extracting colonial wealth from us. We should learn from that history and do what we need to do today.
Absolutely.
If we keep fighting about the past, we are not learning from the past. We are only fighting about the past. I am all, as a historian, I am all for the reality of the past to come out. But you must learn from that and say, and if I were, if I were to give advice, this is the advice I would give. Look, okay, you had a tragic history. At the end of the day, today you're a rising power, right? Why not use that history, which you have in ample amount all around the country, and build the world's most powerful and most lucrative tourism industry, which can give jobs to millions of people. Instead of only fighting about it, why not use it to our advantage? Instead of fighting whether allopathy or Ayurveda is better, why not take the treasures of Ayurveda and build the world's greatest wellness industry? Why only one Ananda Spa? Let's have 100 Ananda Spas, right? Which could bring the whole world seeking this kind of wellness to India's shores, willing to pay top dollar. Why not, instead of fighting about, this is my clothing and that is your clothing, why not take our textile heritage and did what the French and Italians have done? Create a luxury goods industry that the world pours in billions of dollars to get. And this was true, Raghav. The great historian Pliny the Elder complained in the Roman era that the coffers of Rome were being emptied. Why were they being emptied? Because gold was pouring out. Where was it going? To Indies, to India. Because they couldn't get enough of Indian spices, Indian carvings, Indian gems, the diamonds from Golconda. And cloth. Cloth which was so fine like it was a wisp of smoke. Dhaka muslin. Right? So all of this we have. Why not take it to such a level that we bring back that era where the world comes to us for these goods? I think we've had a decade of quarreling and fighting about all of these things. It's done. We should now really see what we can build rather than merely quarrel over.
And capitalize on.
So that we really become that $10 trillion economy, $15 trillion economy that we really want to become.
Absolutely. So Vishwaguru, not just a name, but in practice as well.
Yes,
That's what we need.
Absolutely.
So and after the book on Guru Gobind Singh, you also the Modern Monk on Vivekananda. Again, a very eye-opening book for me. I urge everybody to read that book. It was a phenomenal book. And then let's come to this present book, Hindol, Soul and Sword. You can see the mock-up, but I want to. So this is my personal copy, and I'm going to do something over here, Hindol. The first thing first, you have to sign my book.
Of course, a great
I am a
Thank
fan,
you.
and it would be a treasured collectible for me
Thank you.
if you could sign this book.
So usually authors, in a sense, draw a line through their name
Oh, okay. Wow.
and then write the name of the person.
Oh, I can't believe this just happened. Guys, check this. This is so beautiful.
Thank you so much. It's so kind of you.
No, it is. Because I really wanted to write more books on such topics. And guys, I want to tell the readers and the viewers, the last 50 pages of the book are just the notes part of it. The index and the notes. This speaks volume of what is written in the book. It is deeply researched. It is embedded in facts and figures. This is a scholarly work, and I really want this thing people to know that. The kind of research that has gone into it. It's incredible. Hindol, let's deep dive into a book now.
So I want to tell you a story about this book.
Yeah, please,
also.
let's do it.
When I was beginning to think about writing this book, again, people were like, why do you want to write about political Hinduism? It's so controversial. And I was like, look, it is the story of India's present. How can we not try to understand it better? You see, only in India do these strange things exist. If you look at any civilized country, people are writing and rewriting history all the time. Let's take an example. You go to England, right? Winston Churchill has been written on by maybe hundreds of scholars from all kinds of angles. Only his warriors, was he an imperialist? What was his impact on colonialism? From the left, from the right, all kinds of places, right? And constantly he's being written about. In a sense, people's understanding of Winston Churchill is being deepened. Only in India do we have this strange idea that no. One thing that was written long ago, that's it. That's the final word. That makes no sense. Even Hindu scriptures don't say they are the final word.
Absolutely.
It makes no sense. So I told people that, look, this makes no sense. It is the story of India's present. Why shouldn't we write a book on this? And I felt that story was not being told adequately. It was all very partisan. One person said only good things, one person said only bad things. And I was like, as a historian, surely there is a middle ground path somewhere which is the truth. And I thought I would write it. And, I called it Soul and Sword because there is both in it.
Yeah.
There is, revolutionary fervor in the sword, and there is soul, a lot of depth and a lot of philosophical leanings in the story.
Yeah. Actually, this was the first question. That why did you name the book Soul and Sword? And I'm so glad you clarified that. Because there is soul and there is sword. It is very similar to something, a philosophy that I also like, lotus and dagger.
Of course.
You have the lotus, you have the dagger, you have the guns, you have the roses. Yeah. And I think that is beautiful. Hindol, I want to start with one line from the book. It's not a line, and I'm going to tell the context and then we go into the deep thing.
Sure.
So this is for the viewers, this is a poem or certain lines that Swami Vivekananda said about Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj.
Correct.
Just imagine two iconic figures, one icon saying something amazing about the other. This is what Vivekananda singing the following song.
Yes.
Like the effect of fire on the trees of the forest, like the effect of the panther on a flock of deer, like the effect of a tiger on a herd of elephants, like the effect of sun on the darkness of the night, like the effect of Krishna on Kansa. Such was the effect of Shivaji on the Mlecha gangs. And he goes on.
Yes.
He goes on to glorify, because that man, Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, deserves all the glories.
Yes.
And when I heard this song, I was blown away. I was like, what? From one powerful man singing a song about another historical man.
Yes.
And this was incredible.
Yeah.
So Hindol, first of all, thank you for writing this book. Let's get into the
a lot
questions.
of people don't even know this. I just want to clarify that when Swami Vivekananda wrote the word Lecha, he's referring to invaders.
Invaders.
An invasion. This has nothing to do with the caste system. And
Dravidian versus Aryan, it was not that.
No. And this is, people drag all of these things into contemporary fights unnecessarily. He was talking about invaders, right? Who invaded and destroyed our country. Swami Vivekananda was thinking about the attacks on the Somnath temple and so on and so forth, right? Look, and this is the point, this is a great beginning point to discuss this book. Whenever you discuss political Hinduism, or even Hindutva, if you want to use the word, it gets bogged down into everybody, usually only talks about Savarkar and the RSS and so on and so forth. And the rest of the large history disappears somewhere. Because if you talk to Western scholars, they will ask you, Vivekananda. But Vivekananda never said he was political Hinduism. He never said Hindutva. That's not the point. As I point out in this book, this debate has no end. We shouldn't get into this debate. What we are supposed to try and understand as historians is, what are the characters and narratives and historical instances that are relevant and important to the universe of political Hinduism? People who believe in political Hinduism and practice political Hinduism and believe in Hindutva, what are the figures that they, hold up? What historical instances are valuable to them? And as you will see, Vivekananda is interesting because Vivekananda is this tremendous nationalistic figure. Vivekananda is not only saying that all paths lead to God, of course he's saying that too, but he's also telling a Christian missionary that if you insult my faith again and again, I will throw you off a ship.
Yes.
Famous incident, right? He's saying that again and again we've been attacked and my faith has been attacked and we will not tolerate it. Vivekananda is saying that India must rise and be strong, and without Sanatana Dharma, there is no India. So Vivekananda is important. But Shivaji Maharaj is important. Shivaji Maharaj is important not only because he says Hindavi Swarajya. Again, there's a debate, but does Hindavi Swarajya mean Hindus? The point is, Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj is important not only because he said Hindavi Swarajya, but he also is important to Swami Vivekananda. He's also important to Sri Aurobindo, who gives the Uttar Pada speech. Sri Aurobindo also considers Swami Vivekananda tremendously important to him because he gets these visitations over many days, as you know, when he's in prison. And then he comes out of prison and, of course, chooses a different path. So all of these things are interlinked in our story, right? This admiration is interlinked in our story, and that's why it's a far longer, more interesting story.
Absolutely. No, that is brilliant. So, Hindol, let's start with so I want to break down the terminologies as well and then we'll move on into the more nuances and details. So, let's just very quickly understand what is the meaning of political Hinduism.
Yes.
Is it a philosophy?
Yes.
A theology or an ideology? What is it? And you did explain the history that where it is coming from briefly, but I want to understand, if somebody asked me today, Raghav, what is political Hinduism? What should be my stance and how should I clarify that?
Yeah, it's very simple. Every faith, if practiced in isolation, does not have to interact with the world. अगर आप राघव कल जाके मंदिर में बैठ के पूजा करते हैं पूरी जिंदगी, या you go to a cave and you meditate for the rest of your life, your faith does not interact with the world. It's a private faith. However, as a religion, all religions interact with the world. And when they interact with the world, they interact with politics. Therefore, they have a political aspect to them. There is political Islam, there is political Christianity, there is political Buddhism, certainly there's political Sikhism, and therefore there is also political Hinduism. Political Hinduism is nothing but Hinduism's interaction with the world. And the world has politics. To make it even more simple, some people say, and I think there's a grain of truth to it, Hinduism is for your inner development. It's very clear that आप शास्त्र पढ़िए, आप meditate करिए, आप पूजा पाठ करिए. It evolves you. From the Mooladhara to the Shastra, your entire Kundalini will rise, you will evolve, you might find enlightenment, wonderful. However, in order to protect Hinduism and its interaction with the world, you need a framework to encounter the world. And Hindutva is that, or a political Hinduism is that framework, is that arm that interacts with the world, is the arm that interacts and engages with the world. And therefore it is relevant as long as religion remains, or Hinduism remains a public phenomena, there will be need for it to interact with the world. And political Hinduism is just that. Why do I call the book about political Hinduism and not say Hindutva, the word? Well, one simple reason is that this was first published in America, and obviously, it had to be explained to a much wider world. The other reason is the Hindutva word, in a sense, comes much later. People say Savarkar, now of course some people say Chandranath Basu, but I for the first time show in my book that for the first time the word Hindutva is used in the same book from where we get Vande Mataram,
yes.
Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay's Anandamath. Right? The word Hindutva was first used in Anandamath. And Anandamath is about rebellion too.
Yeah.
So you can see how nationalism, the word Hindutva, political Hinduism, Anandamath, as you know, is a great story of these warrior monks,
yes.
right? All of them become interconnected, right? And that's why all of these stories also get interconnected with our nationalism. Then, of course, there's Savarkar and so on and so forth. So there's a whole history to this.
Makes sense. So it's kind of like if Android is an open source operating system that any different devices can use, you still need some guidelines. So Hindutva is that guidelines which still allows you to interact with it, not exploit it. So is Hindutva also a way which protects the sanity of political Hinduism?
Some people could say that in a sense, any arm that engages with politics has to be a sword arm.
Yes.
Right? Because it must not only engage but also protect. Right? And therefore we had the concept of, Rajas had rishis in India. We had this concept of the Raj Rishi.
Yes.
What did the Raj Rishi do? The Raj Rishi only spoke to the emperor, to the king, right? And advised the king on matters of statecraft. And the king turned to the Raj Rishi because the Raj Rishi was unconnected. He had no stake, right? He didn't want something from the Raja because he was in his own sort of domain and spiritual domain. But he had the wisdom and the distance to give the right advice.
Yes.
He was not a stakeholder, as we would say today. If you're a stakeholder, you will always also think, what is to my benefit?
Skin in the game, yeah.
Yeah. But he had no skin in the game. He was evolved enough to give absolutely fair advice, including advice that the king would not like to hear, which nobody else could give.
That's why he was there.
That's why he was there. To essentially tell the king the truth without any fear or favor. Right? So this is a long tradition in India. Right? And I think it comes from this. I think it's a wrong belief that monks don't engage with the world. As Vivekananda also believed, and his own master, Sri Ramakrishna, told him, when Vivekananda went to Sri Ramakrishna and said, I want samadhi, I want mukti, what am I even doing? You've taught me the path. I find absolute bliss, Satchit Anandam in this path. Why am I going to engage with the world for? The world is constantly full of maya. It is disturbing. People are foolish. They're selfish. They're greedy. Right? Sri Ramakrishna said, how selfish are you? You are at the best place to teach them what is the right path. Because you have no longer any skin in the game.
Yes.
You don't want to extract anything from them. Right? So that's why, Swami Vivekananda came and said, the greatest service to the divine is seva.
Yes.
Right? That's why he said every Daridra Narayan, as we say in Bengali, Daridra Narayan, every hungry and poor person that you see is Narayan.
Yeah. And how can I let him starve?
And how can I let him starve? Right? That's why when the Brotherhood of Monks, that is the Ramakrishna Mission, was created, that's why it came up with this thing that the first thing will be seva. If we cannot offer seva, how can we serve God if we cannot even serve? And this tradition is widespread in India. I wrote a book on Srila Prabhupada called Sing, Dance and Pray, the founder of ISKCON, right? Great Vaishnavite tradition. Srila Prabhupada, a lot of people don't understand. Akshay Patra is today the world's biggest midday meal serving institution, 4 billion plus meals, right? But where did it come from? It came from the fact that one day from his temple, Srila Prabhupada saw that poor children were trying to pick up food from the same place that a dog was trying to pick up food.
So basically leftovers and thrown
over. And he said, how can I give bhog to Narayan, to Krishna, if I cannot feed the children and the people outside? How can Krishna be happy if his own people are hungry? So he said, and it's written instruction, that within a 10-kilometer radius of any ISKCON institution, no person will go hungry. If they want food, it is the duty of that ISKCON institution to provide food. That's the inspiration behind Akshay Patra. As you know, Akshay Patra is the bowl that came out, right?
Yes. From the Samudra Manthan.
From Samudra Manthan. It's the bowl that never finishes. The food never finishes from Akshay Patra. And actually, Murli Manohar Joshi ji had given the name Akshay Patra
to the organization.
Yes. So, therefore, what I'm saying is that this is a long, and you see, what happens in India is that we never join the dots. We know that this person did this, that person did that.
In isolation,
right? But actually, we must join the dots. This is Bharatiya Sanskriti. This is Bharatiya Parampara. What happens is, the Ramakrishna Mission people will say this is only ours.
Yes.
The ISKCON people will say this is only ours. Actually, it is the job of people like you and me to join the dots and say this is Bharatiya Sanskriti, this is Bharatiya Parampara. This is in temple after temple across India. You go and you go to the Kamakhya, they will tell you, please have bhog. Again, and you see, you don't even know, you may not know that God knows how many tens of thousands of people you're feeding. Right? But you know about the Sikh Langar?
Yes.
Because it is relatively better, more people know about it because it's more recent and so on and so forth. But you don't realize that when Sikhism, which is a relatively new faith, came about, where did this take this tradition from? It didn't come out of thin air. This is the tradition of our land.
This is our darshan.
This is our darshan. This is our philosophy. This has been going on in our country for hundreds and hundreds, thousands of years. You go to any ancient temple, you will see bhog will be served. Every time I go to Orissa, no matter what I'm doing, I even tell people nowadays, my biggest thing is to go to the Ananta Vasudeva temple in Bhubaneswar and eat bhog there. Again, they've been feeding people for hundreds and hundreds of years. They don't talk about it. Nobody knows. So, ये हमारी परंपरा है. This is our parampara. This is our Sanskriti. And if only we would understand it, we will realize that this is in every corner of the country. Right? This is the richness of our parampara.
So these philosophies, when they are translated into action, can save the lives of billions.
Of course.
That one thing can diverge into billions. Now that is mind-boggling. And Hindol, what is fascinating, and I'll come to this thing in
See, Rahul, one last thing I would tell you.
Please.
It is Bharatiya Parampara that no one who comes to the door of God is ever turned away. We say Vasudeva Kutumbakam. Remember, it is the same parampara which says, Ghar aaye hue mehman ko kabhi khali haath nahi aaya. In our tradition, my mother's not well now, but even today, no one who comes home is not possible that is not offered at the very least a glass of water. Right? Nobody goes without anything. It is a long tradition. But where did we learn all these things? My mother didn't wake up one morning and learn this. She learned it because this is our collective tradition.
And not individualistic.
Not at all.
It's not as if you go to that place, that house, they only offer water. No. It is a collective. It's there in our subconscious, and we do it because it was there in the past as well.
Absolutely. And I would connect it further. Today we did a great job of sending vaccines around the world. India has become a net provider of global public goods. I would say the same spirit holds there. We were creating vaccines, right? We gave it liberally to everyone. Look at China. China only thought strategically, who do I give it to? Will you get, can I extract some other benefit from you?
Transaction.
What will you give me? We just said this is a moment for all humanity.
Yeah.
We will give, right? So this is the richness. That's why we say Bharatiya Parampara is a living Parampara. You know, it's not just something in the ancient past that is there.
Yeah.
We are living it even today.
Absolutely. It's dynamic.
It's dynamic.
As you rightly said about the scriptures, that even the scriptures are not something that you just can say, okay, this is the final word.
No.
It is 2.0, it is 3.0, it has to evolve.
And not a single saint in India ever said, I am the final word.
Absolutely.
They said there is a final word.
Yeah.
People discover it. I have discovered it. Maybe you will discover it.
Absolutely.
100 years later, somebody else might discover it. The final word doesn't change.
Yeah.
Right? Ekam sat.
Yeah.
Vipra bahuda vadanti. Right?
One truth.
Truth. The sages have called it in different names. The truth doesn't change. But there will be endless sages who will come and discover it.
Yeah.
And Vivekananda expanded on that by saying every soul is potentially divine, which means not only the sages, every individual has the potential to discover it.
Be it a sinner, be it anyone.
Yeah, there is no sinner.
Yeah, there is no sinner.
Vivekananda famously said there is no
Yes,
sinner.
I remember.
How can I call you the child of Narayan, the child of God, the son of God, daughter of God, and call you a sinner? There is no sinner.
Yeah.
When you come in supplication before God, you only receive love.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that is the great difference. Used to say in America and England and all these places, you keep saying this is a sinner, this is a sinner. In my Sanatan Dharma, there are no sinners.
Yeah.
Right?
Hindu, now one thing, when we were talking this thing, one thing came into my mind I really want to understand.
Yes.
Let's look at Japan.
Yes.
So Japanese people, they are indigenous people.
Yeah.
I mean, more or less, you will not find mix.
Yeah.
You will not find people coming from other countries, settling down, growing up. No.
Largely.
Indigenous people. And we all know, be it via their pop culture, be it via their manga, anime, that they as a race are very proud.
Yeah.
And they are proud not just of themselves, but their ancestry.
Quite right.
But their samurai culture, of their food, of everything.
Yeah.
And that
Everything.
shows in their history, that shows in their professionalism, the way
Sure.
they're conducting business, right?
Sure.
What I get confused, because this is such a big part of political Hinduism to understand the context from where that is coming. All of my gods and goddesses, if I look at the images right now, Durga, Kali, Krishna, Shiva, Rama, two things I can see very visibly. They are armed and they are ribbed. I mean, that's what I've seen. They all have abs. Okay?
That's right.
They all have great figures.
Yeah.
They all are armed.
Yeah.
All the stories of Hindus, gods and goddesses that we find in the Puranas are of warfare.
Apart from Lord Ganesha.
Apart from Lord Ganesha. But still,
Though
yes, they're...
Lord Ganesha also is a Rudra Roop, by the way.
Yeah, there's a Tantric, there's a Rudra Roop Ganesha as well.
Yeah.
And there's a story about his Ekdant when he was fighting Parshuram.
Yeah.
Not stories.
Yeah.
So it's there in Replet, it's there in the history of my gods and goddesses. You in your book have mentioned about the invasions, about the attacks that happened from Afghanistan and beyond that, Gauri, Ghazni, how the Rajputs try to repel that. Then you talk about the fall of the Vijayanagar Empire. Then you talk about the Shivaji, which will go into detail. When we have seen in our history, in our gods and goddesses, that people are fighting, they have that valor, they had that martial spirit to repel people. Two questions. Why did the modern history that we are reading, there is very less emphasis on the martial acumen of a race? And how did non-violence and peace become the primary philosophy of India and the leaders?
Yeah, so all of this actually, Raghav, comes from the colonial period. You see, the British taught us that, number one, the Aryan invasion theory, right? At that time, it was in vogue, we also believed it. But now, of course, all research shows that it's all complete bunkum. No such thing exists. Anyway, the other thing they taught us is this whole thing that there are only one martial race. The Sikhs and the Gorkhas and whatever. Everybody, non-violence is the path. And of course, Gandhiji is non-violent. I have nothing against non-violence. But the British emphasized, even today, that's why British people on Twitter get so angry about Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose. At Kartavya Path in Delhi, right? Because they don't want us to remember anything that is martial about our freedom. They don't want us to, that's why they gave such a bad name to Subhas Chandra Bose. I have pointed out on Twitter, there are quotes from Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose saying that he totally disagrees with the path that National Socialism of Hitler finally takes.
Yeah.
There's literally a quote in a letter of him saying that. And yet they really badmouthed him and maligned him. Because you see, the British, yes, no doubt Gandhiji's non-violent struggle was very important. I am not somebody who dismisses that or dismisses Gandhiji. Gandhiji is very important to us. At the end of the day, here is a figure that an Indian, a fellow Indian, whom the whole world looked at. Why will I, say anything disparaging about him? Gandhiji is very important. But you see, the British, of course, was, pushed by the non-violent struggle. But suddenly they, at the end, they preponed their exit.
Yes.
Now, why would a colonial power prepone its exit, right? What happened basically was that after the Second World War, the British had won, along with the Americans and so on and so forth. But Britain was a broken country.
Financially, you mean?
Completely.
From
Financially,
all motives.
militarily. London had been bombed. Remember, the Nazis had bombed London.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
So it was militarily, financially, economically a broken country. America was on the rise, but Britain was a broken country. Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose's army gave them the scare of a lifetime. Because they felt that if the army in India turns against us, there is no hope. Right? Because it's the Indians who are fighting Indians to keep control of the empire. And the second thing that happened, again, no one talks about this much, the naval mutiny off the shores of Mumbai, at that time Bombay, right? So, and remember, the British were a naval power. So that really scared them that, if our naval power, naval officers turn against us, and if the army turns against us, there will be a massacre. It will be 1857 once again, right? So they quickly wrapped up and ran away. But obviously, that's not the story they wanted to tell you, right? And they have therefore projected this idea that, look, we were so moved by this protest and we said, okay, sure, we just gave the country back and came away. No. There was a whole period before Gandhiji lands in India of revolution, in Bengal and Maharashtra and all these people, Khudiram Bose and Prafulla Chaki and the Chapekar brothers and all these people, right? Armed revolution. In Bengal, they call it Ogni Jug, the age of fire, right? And, they attacked again Master Surya Sen and all these people.
They had secret societies.
They had secret societies.
Aurobindo, yeah.
Aurobindo himself was part of a secret society when he was in England.
Lotus and Dagger.
When you said Lotus and Dagger, I was going to point that out.
Yeah.
Yes. So, you see, this is the interesting thing. The British don't want you to hear about these things. They want to keep this cultivated thing because the empire was very important. You see, especially in the British upper classes, the empire is so hardwired into their genes.
Yeah.
They cannot let go the empire so easily.
Is it the white man's burden philosophy that they have?
Of course. And it's partly white man's burden philosophy, partly the fact that Britain was this great civilizing force around the world.
Yeah.
You see, every nation that has risen in the world has had a grand narrative.
Yes. A
Right?
story.
A story that they've told themselves and told the world.
And justified.
Correct. So Britain's grand narrative was that it's a great civilizing power. The white man's burden, as you said. So it was spreading the light of civilization around the world, right? That was their great thing. European countries also felt the same thing, Belgium and France and so on and so forth. When America rose, it said it was exceptional. It was a city upon the hill. Right? It had erected the Statue of Liberty, right? And to say that, every person who was hungry, poor, the light of lamp of the Statue of Liberty was welcoming them.
Land of opportunity. It's a
the
new
land
world.
of opportunity. It's a new world. It has nothing to do with the old world. It was a new world built in a new way. So the Britain's entire thing about the empire being a force of good essentially taught us these things. And the Indian elite is highly susceptible to these narratives, right? We like to hold on to these things. We still like, a little bit of, borrowing from the West and this, that, and the other. But it is slowly going. This is the process of decolonization that happens slowly. My entire thing is that, okay, we all understand what's going on. But decolonization should focus really on promoting our positives.
Yes.
Not only pointing out their negatives. We have spent a lot of time pointing out their negatives.
Yeah.
Now it's really time to promote our positives.
Yeah, makes sense. No, that is brilliant. And I'm sure that the Europeans' philosophy, there at the back of it might have been some political Christianity as well.
No,
their
of
agenda
course.
of giving, their
All
idols.
of this at the heart of the nation-state project, which came from the Peace of Westphalia.
Yeah.
Religion was Christianity was an integral idea behind it. You see, because all these wars that had been fought in Europe,
In the name of the God.
in the name of Christianity,
Yes.
Protestant and Catholics fought against each other. The church was not only a religious institution, the church was a political institution. The church could go against the king. So it is a very complicated history, right?
Yeah.
So therefore, I think, all that is in its own place. But for India, we should now promote what is good about us and really think about what should be our grand narrative.
Yeah, and take it ahead in terms of, however we want to capitalize it,
Yes.
however we want to take it ahead. Yeah, great. Just 1 second.
No problem.
So now I want to ask you some very important questions.
Please.
In the book Hindol,
Yeah.
there was a segment about RSS and there's a lot of details in history of RSS.
Yeah.
In the book you have mentioned about RSS, the fountainhead of the ideology of political Hinduism.
Yeah.
I want you to explain this.
Yeah.
How do you associate RSS with political Hinduism and it being the fountainhead?
Yeah. So the RSS is the first time that political Hinduism gets a sort of concentrated organizational shape and
Achha, it's like a body is forming now.
it's a body, right? Of course, Savarkar spoke about, the essentials of Hindutva
Yes.
famously. But all of this was very much in the realm of ideas.
Yes.
RSS is the first time when it coagulates into an organization. An organization comes up which says, this is our ideology, this is what we believe India should be like, right? And therefore I say RSS is the organizational fountainhead, so to speak.
Yeah.
It takes what was in the ideas realm and gives it shape and form. It actually creates an organizational philosophy. It trains people at the grassroots level. It creates leaders, right? So it gets a far more concrete form as far as an organization is concerned. Once the RSS is created.
Why do you think it is very RSS as an organization is very misinterpreted, or people really do not know about it, and usually people want to associate themselves if and when they are talking even about it?
Yeah, so I think there are two reasons, Raghav. One, of course, is remember, the association of political Hinduism and its ideas with the assassination of Mahatma Gandhi, right?
Pivotal, really pivotal.
It's pivotal.
Yeah.
However, I have pointed out in a book of mine, in fact, in Being Hindu, that even Nathuram Godse never said he wanted a Hindu country.
Yeah.
He said, I want a secular country, but I want a country where all laws are equal. And today what is happening in my country, and under Gandhiji, actually all the laws and all the rules seem to be getting skewed towards the Muslim and towards Pakistan and so on and so forth. And India is suffering and therefore I am angry. Right? That was his logic. Now my point is that, you see, because of that association, RSS was banned, all of this is in the book, right?
Yes.
And so on and so forth.
Yes.
Then Sardar Patel said that, look, this was really the Hindu Mahasabha, I could not find any evidence, so the ban was lifted and so on and so forth. Now, because of that connection, for many years there was ostracism. And remember, after Mahatma Gandhiji's assassination, many Brahmins in Maharashtra were killed.
Yes.
Because they came from the same
Godse was a
Godse was a Maharashtrian Brahmin.
Yes.
So all of this history muddied the water for the RSS,
Yeah.
right? And therefore, for a long time, people were like, oh, this is the people who killed Gandhi and this, that, and the other.
And they had one body to blame now.
There was
not
one
segregated.
Yeah. So it got pinpointed, and there was a lot of political pressure on them and so on. So that was one of the reasons why for a large part of their history it's been complicated. And the other reason is, I think, because RSS as an institution is very focused on building people. It is not trying to, in my book I make this, I tell the story where somebody asks Mohan Rao Bhagwatji that, why don't you create your own Times of India? Right?
Yes.
And he says, no, RSS is not here to recreate every institution.
Yes.
RSS is here to create people who would be good enough
to be a part of.
To rise, to not only be part of Times of India, but rise to its top.
Yes.
Right? And this story I mentioned in the book. I think this story has a grain of answer to your question. Because it's not an organization that, tried to push itself to the forefront.
Yeah.
It was focused on creating people who would then be part of it. And the RSS drew a lot of its inspiration from Ramakrishna Mission.
Yes.
Ramakrishna Mission, and it drew a lot of inspiration from Ramakrishna Mission. You see, there's a reason. See how history connects everything. You have to ask, why did Narendra Modi go to the Ramakrishna Mission to become a monk?
Yes.
He could have gone to Baps.
Yep.
He could have gone to somebody else. Right? He could have gone to ISKCON. He could have gone to so many places. The reason he went to the Ramakrishna Mission is because there is a long history of the RSS drawing inspiration from the Ramakrishna Mission and from Swami Vivekananda, who they hold in great respect, right? Swami Vivekananda, when he created the order, said that, look, the monks are not supposed to be the heroes of this order. They are supposed to create people in society who would really reflect our values, right? That's why you'll see what is common between Ramakrishna Mission and RSS is that the monks, one thing that they don't have, they, two or three things actually, they take a vow of chastity.
Bank account.
They don't have a bank account. The monks never have a bank account. None of the pracharaks of the RSS have a bank account, right? Yeah. But this again, you'll see long tradition. In the Indian spirituality, if you look at, for instance, Vaishnavite tradition, the monks are only supposed to take whatever is given to them as charity.
Absolutely.
They have nothing of their own.
Even in Shankaracharya tradition.
Apart from that one cloth that they are wearing and a begging bowl and a staff, they're not supposed to have anything. Whatever is given, bhiksham dehi, right? Whatever is given in the bhiksha, they're supposed to eat. And Buddhism took that tradition forward.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Whatever is given, you eat. That same cloth you wear. When it gets absolutely torn, you take another one. Again, it's given to you. And you have a staff. That's it. So this tradition is going on for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. No,
so therefore, to answer your question, therefore I feel because of these two reasons, the association with Gandhiji's assassination, and of course, as I explained to you, it's not an organization that has pushed its own people as the stars. In fact, far more, it is the BJP, which is of course, because it's a political organization, pushed its own leaders, and the leaders were trained in RSS.
Yeah.
Whether it's Narendra Modi, whether it's Amit Shah and all these people, of course, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, Lal Krishna Advani, and so on and so forth.
Because, a lot of people these days, when they are on social media, because they have a free hand and it is unregulated, I've seen people very vocally relate RSS to ISIS. They have seen that. They have ISIS, India has RSS. I mean, this is just nonsensical.
No, but I would like to ask the question, and people say all kinds of foolish things on social media. So this is laughable. Tell me, has any RSS person ever got onto a jeep with Kalashnikov guns and gone and killed people? Have any RSS person made videos holding captors and slitting their throat?
Yeah, or killing the mothers.
Or killing the mothers and babies? Has any RSS person ever, has any ISIS person, actually I should reverse this, has any ISIS or has ISIS given 2 prime ministers to any country? The fact is, and I write this in my book, that look, you may be a critic of the RSS. I have no problems. You may like the RSS, you may not like the RSS. Some people like the Congress party, some people don't like the Congress party, some people like the Trinamool Congress, some people don't like the Trinamool Congress. I have no problems. Some people even like the Ramakrishna Mission and some people don't like the Ramakrishna Mission. Whatever, right? Some people like ISKCON, some people don't like ISKCON. My point is, this organization not only is huge in Indian society, but it has also now given India 2 prime ministers. We cannot ignore it. And those prime ministers now in total have governed India for 20 years. Narendra Modi now in his 3rd time, and of course it was Atal Bihari Vajpayee. So you have to try and understand what this organization does. You cannot say, no one can talk about this organization. But that's very funny. Because clearly there's a political party, the organization is there, people are winning elections, becoming prime minister. How can we not want to understand what's going on?
Yeah.
So therefore, yes, I mean, people say all kinds of crazy things. But the fact is, we have to try and understand the RSS because the RSS gives the governing philosophy to a political party that has now ruled India for 2 decades. And now simultaneously has won 3 national elections in India. So we have no choice but to try and understand.
Absolutely.
Right? It makes no sense not to understand.
Yeah, they're not into the same parameters. You can't just compare. They're not at all. The only commonality between them is that they're organizations. That's it.
No, and you know, these, look, I mean, social media, like you said, I mean, anyone says anything on social
unregulated.
media. You know, it makes no sense. They don't know. There's a lot of, there's a lot of poverty of imagination in social media. You know, it's powered, for whatever it's worth, power of being able to speak out. Power that has been given to everybody. So, you know, everybody is not clever enough on how to use it. People are doing whatever they feel like.
Hindol, now tell me, why, for the political Hinduism ideology, is it very important for the leaders and for the future leaders and for also a person like me to understand the history of India, specifically about the invasions of the Mughal Empire, about the Somnath temple, the fall of the Vijayanagar Empire up till Shivaji? Why is it very important for anyone to even look at the ancient history? And specifically, let's talk about the Mughal invasion, the Somnath, the Vijayanagar Empire fall, and the rise and fall of the Maratha Empire.
Let's begin from this point. When you're taught history in school, you go straight from Gauri, Ghazni, Mughals, British.
Yes. Somewhat Rajput is there, but
very little.
Very little.
Bilkul. But that's not how history happened. Between Gauri and Ghazni, there are nearly 300 years. How is it that those 300 years existed? Because those 300 years Indians were resisting. We are never taught that. The Hindu Kush mountains, you know, Hindu clans and tribes were resisting. They were resisting and they gave the biggest fright and, you know, battle to Alexander the Great. Please remember, one of Alexander's most determined battles was against, and he was an emperor, but it was against a tribal chieftain. You know, they called him Porus, we call him Purava.
Of the Sindh area.
Of the Sindh area. And there too, Purava would have won, had it not, in classic Indian history, King Ambi, one of his jealous neighbors, you know, gave leaked information to Alexander. ये हमारी इतिहास है. हर बार कोई भारतीय को हमेशा उसको डिफीट करता है, नेगेट करता है, पुल डाउन करता है और बिट्रे करता है. We have a long history of betrayal. The same thing happened in the Battle of Plassey. Right? So you see, again and again and again to Prithviraj Chauhan, same thing happened.
Absolutely.
So this history, we have a terrible, torturous history. India cannot rise because Indians betray their own motherland. This is our nasty history. You are an Indian, Raghav, and so am I. We should have the courage to face this history. ये हमारी इतिहास है of thousands of years. Indians betray their own motherland. That's why India cannot rise. If Ambi wouldn't have betrayed Purava, Alexander would have been stopped. Right? Remember, Raja Purava had war elephants. I'm just teaching a course when I'm talking about this. War elephants that the Greeks saw in India, that idea traveled back with them.
Interesting.
Into Greek, other wars in Europe. In fact, they say when Hannibal crossed the Alps and used war elephants, that they got from Africa. But where did they learn this idea of using war elephants? It came from India because of the war elephants that Alexander saw, and his troops were so frightened when they saw the war elephants of armored war elephants of King Purava. In fact, after the great war with Purava, what does Purava say to Alexander? You know, he says, "How should I treat you?
As a king.
Treat me as a king treats another king." And after that, Alexander wants to cross over and, you know, conquer the rest of India. His troops say no. They say, if one tribal chieftain is this, God knows what lies once we meet the real kings of India. We don't have the energy and the stamina to fight that.
Nanda Empire.
Imagine what they would have faced, right? So they are very cognizant. They're like, we don't want to fight you. A tribal chieftain on the border has given us this. What are we going to fight when we go inside? But किसी बच्चे को ऐसे नहीं पढ़ाया जाता है हमारे देश में. हमें सिर्फ सिखाया जाता है अलेक्जेंडर आया था हमें हरा दिया.
Conqueror of India. He's been called as a conqueror of India. We name our children as Sikandar. Not Purushottam or
You never have you heard anybody call their child Purava?
Nahin. Nobody calls it Purava. They name it Sikandar, but not Purava.
So this is the tragedy of India. You see, this is the tragedy of India. I think there was only one. I remember now that you're talking about it. I think one Bollywood actor's son was called Puru or Purava. Rajkumar. Rajkumar's son was called Puru Rajkumar. Puru Rajkumar, which comes from Purava. Puru, King Raja Puru. So we never call our children Puru. We say Sikandar like you're saying. It makes no sense. So we are a very self-defeating culture. Right? So we fought for 300 years and kept them at bay until Ghazni, between Gauri and Ghazni, right? Actually, India's history is resistance at every step. We are never taught the history like that. We are taught our history as defeats at every step. हार गए. Actually, ये इतिहास नहीं है हमारा. हमने रेजिस्ट किया और जीतने वाले थे, फिर किसी ने बिट्रे कर दिया. हमने रेजिस्ट किया, उनको भगा दिया, फिर वो आए, फिर हमने रेजिस्ट किया, किसी ने बिट्रे किया, फिर हम हार गए. ये हमारी इतिहास है. अगर जिस दिन, the day we start teaching this to our children in school, this country will change. But we don't teach this in our school. We teach our history as a collection of failures and defeats. We must teach our children that actually our history is a history of valiant, vigorous resistance. And wherever we lost, it is because of betrayal. And who betrayed? Not somebody from outside. It is your inside. आपके घर में ही शत्रु था. इसीलिए हमारे संस्कृति में शत्रु बोध इतना कम है. क्योंकि शत्रु, बाहर का शत्रु क्या करेगा आपका? आपके तो घर में शत्रु है. Your real enemy is within. It's not outside.
The cancer is within.
Of course.
And is it true when people say that our history was not written by our historians and it was the conquerors who had written our history?
Today.
Is that the reason that we don't know anything about it?
Absolutely. Indian history has been outsourced largely to outsiders. आज भी आप देखिए, a lot of history is being written by outsiders, right? Of course, a lot of things have changed. A lot of us are trying to contribute and so on and so forth. But for a long time, students, who to quote Alexander Cunningham. Where are the Indian sources? Tell me, are people taught R.C. Mazumdar and Jadunath Sarkar?
No.
Of course not.
They don't even know the names.
They don't even know the names. No. So, I mean, I'll give you an example. आप बताइए मुझे. 10 साल पहले बड़ा चर्चित था. There was a lot of uproar of a book written by Wendy Doniger.
Yes, on Hinduism.
On Hinduism. And she had written all kinds of strange things which you read that you're like, which Hindu thinks this? What are you even talking about, right? I don't even want to mention those things because, it's just unnecessary. Yeah. Turned out that Wendy Doniger does not even know Sanskrit.
Yeah.
She was giving 1000-page, 500-page gyan to the Indians and the Hindus on what Hindus are. Tell me, today, can there ever be? Let me give you an example. In England, one of the most famous Roman historians, or historians of Rome, is a professor called Mary Beard. She's very famous. She's done a lot of work on Rome. Could she have become a famous professor of Roman history without knowing Latin?
Not at all. It's illogical.
Can there be a famous professor of China without knowing Mandarin? Can there be a famous professor of Iran or Persia without knowing Farsi? India is the only country where you don't need to know the language, where you don't need to know anything, but you can become an expert because you're white skin. Whatever you say is right. Or our elites are so miserable. I blame our elites essentially. We have the worst elites in the world.
Yeah, it's their
our
failure.
Elites is, we have a rotten elite. They are all hand in glove with these characters. And they are constantly trying to shove this down our throat. I was astonished to hear Wendy Doniger doesn't know Sanskrit. She's giving gyan on Hinduism. And in Delhi, in Lutyens Delhi, all the elites are clapping, saying, amazing, amazing. This is the truth about Hinduism.
And they're defending her critics.
Say, oh, you guys are all, Hindutva-vadis, you guys are all terrible. Amazing. Look at the shallowness of the whole thing.
Shallowness and not the spinelessness, I would say.
Spinelessness, shallowness, ye betrayal hai.
Yes.
This is Raja Ambi being repeated today in 21st century India.
Yeah.
This is the betrayal of Prithviraj Chauhan in 21st century India.
Yeah.
What happened in the Battle of Plassey by Mir Jafar, this is the Mir Jafar clan of today.
Yeah.
They are betraying their own country, living in their own country and betraying it every day.
But Hindol, if this philosophy and concept of betraying is never addressed, is never rectified, that means we as a civilization are always vulnerable.
Absolutely.
We are vulnerable to invasions.
That's why all the work that you do or I do or all of us collectively do, it is absolutely vital. Because if we don't stop it, 20 years later, your children and my children will be sitting and talking about the same thing. And they will be cursing us, saying, oh, our parents also did nothing about it. Right? So we must be the generation that breaks this once for all.
And that can only happen once we understand where it all began and where we fell.
I'll give you an example. There's a very famous, recent New Year book has come out. African history as written by Africans.
Is it about Gandhi?
No, it is about an African who's written that. Because she's saying, she's a scholar of Africa, she's saying African history is always written by the white. But Indians never say Indian history written by Indians. If we say it, we are chauvinistic, we are Hindutva-vadi, we are parochial, we have no scholarship. Why? Because we want to tell our own history. We must always look to the white person. Whatever history they tell us, yahi satya hai.
That's the validation.
That's the validation. You tell me, have you ever heard, I want to ask you, Raghav, you read a lot of books. Have you ever heard even a single instance, आप मुझे एक उदाहरण दिखा दीजिए, one single instance, where in America they are discussing a book written on America written by an Indian?
For them it would be fiction, illogical.
Can you show me one book being written by an Indian about Britain which is being discussed by British people saying, oh, this is the truth about my country? They wouldn't it would never get published.
Even if it's good.
Even if it's good, because the publishers themselves would say, who are you? So therefore, there is India studies departments. Outside. Does India have British studies?
No.
Even if we want to start, will anybody allow? No. Can India have America studies? No. Can India have Europe studies? No. They don't care. This is the hierarchy. They will only keep telling us we only have to accept. I want to ask the question, why don't I open an America Studies department in India, have Indians study America and write 10 books? Will they allow it? No, they won't. I want to ask, America to फिर भी not a colonizing power, at least for us. What about Britain? Forever they're telling us what our history is. I want to open a department of Britain studies and produce 20 scholars and write 20 books about Britain. Will they accept it? No, they won't. All these Indians who go, including me, I went to Oxford, all these people who go to British universities, can we ever write a book about British history? Will it be accepted?
Not at all. We might write, but it won't be accepted.
It will not be accepted. But whatever they write is, as
blindly taken,
the
without
ultimate
any
truth. This is, see, when you start to ask these questions, they will tell you chauvinist, parochial, you're trying to be Hindutva-vadi, this, saffronized, this, that and the other, because you're asking these questions.
And I think the worst part about this question, and this is a very great thing that you've said, is that there is an Indian studies in China.
Can you imagine?
We are not.
I'm telling you, the day is not far when Chinese scholars will write our history. Here, a different elite will at that time say, though that is the right history.
It's as if they are waiting for them to write
Of
about
course
it.
we are. We are. That's the tragic truth. We are waiting for them to write.
And this is very hard to digest. It's. Then how will any civilization, when we are just waiting for an external validation, do anything?
Nothing.
Good.
That's why we're not able to do anything.
That's why we're not Vishwaguru,
Yeah.
because we can't.
Yeah, it's the truth. It's the truth. This is the truth. You and I have to face this very tragic, very painful truth. But unless you face the truth, how will you ever solve it, right? So you have to begin by truth and reconciliation, right? You can't reconcile with anything unless you face the truth. This is the truth. You and I have to face that this is the truth about our country. Even today, we are waiting for somebody with white skin to write our history.
Yeah.
Then we will all clap and say this is amazing.
Yeah.
Anybody who questions anything there saying, oh, this is wrong, will be called parochial, oh, you're illiterate, you don't know anything. Imagine, I cannot even imagine how much ruckus got created about Wendy Doniger.
Yes.
Then I found out a few years, I was studying in Columbia, I was talking to somebody and they said, do you know, she doesn't even know Sanskrit. I was like, no, I didn't know that. She was like, yeah, that's why nobody takes her seriously. She doesn't know Sanskrit. She has lots of leftist friends who keep, pushing her, but she doesn't know Sanskrit.
See, it's like India is that kind of an individual who will fall in love with anyone if they say I love you.
Yeah. हम तो गुलामी है.
हम wait करने कोई में बोले.
We are waiting to be colonized. एक तो we were colonized and invaded.
Yeah.
Today it is almost as if we are waiting.
Yeah.
Please come and colonize us.
I think the last straw would be and foreigners saying that I am Kalki. I am the 11th of the
We will accept it.
We'll accept that. And it's happening already. A lot of Westerners are coming into this space
But
and
that-
teaching us.
Yeah.
Not only history, but our religion.
Mindfulness is not ours. Now mindfulness is taught to us by the West.
And it was a Buddhist innovation,
Yeah.
apparently.
Yeah.
Oh, this is very scarring as well, Hindol, and this is very scary.
So this is very deep-seated and ingrained in our brain. Tell me, can a Indian, tomorrow, any Indian who becomes a devout Christian and does lots of research and does the West want to accept something?
Absolutely not.
Of course not.
And we are just waiting for that. And it's happening.
Of course we are waiting that some white person will come us, we'll be like, amazing. You have told us the right thing. पर वो तो हो ही गया ना. Wendy Doniger तो वही था. He came and told us what the Hindus were. हमें तो पता ही नहीं था. We didn't know what the Hindus were. We were waiting for Wendy Doniger to come and tell us. So this is our sad state.
Yeah. Well, this is very,
Wendy Doniger will come and tell us the Hindus are like this. Then Audrey Trushke will tell us Aurangzeb was misunderstood.
Yeah.
The people who faced Aurangzeb have nothing to say.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? It's like this. Imagine your family or my family was in the Holocaust. You came and told that Jewish family, let me tell you what your family faced. Why? Because I have white skin. How can you not accept? They will slap you. Audrey Trushke is telling us, we who suffered Aurangzeb, our land has scars of that even today. She's coming and telling us what he did. Arey boss,
उसके साथ तो किया भी नहीं है ये.
you have nothing to do with this.
Absolutely.
So this is, we are stuck in a very bad place.
And I think that is the same concept that applies to the exodus of Kashmiri Pandit. We will talk about the exodus of Jews, but we dare talk about the exodus of the Kashmiri
No,
Pandits.
you can't.
We just absolutely cannot.
Kashmiri Pandits themselves barely talk about the exodus.
Thank you for
So
saying that.
here's the interesting
You're
thing.
so right.
It is not about you and me. Kashmiri Pandits don't want to talk about the exodus of Kashmiri Pandits.
They don't. You're so right. They don't.
So these are the tragedies of India. We have to face it. Thankfully, I have to say with our generation, some things are beginning to change. But I would say we need at least another 20 years for absolute change to happen.
But continuous action.
Continuous action for at least 2 decades is required until this poison goes out of our blood. This validation, this poison of seeking validation goes out of our blood.
I think innovation can play a very crucial role in that.
Very, very, very crucial play.
Innovation is very important. Yeah. Okay. Hindol, now there is another quote that I have taken from the book.
Sure.
Be that as it may.
Yeah.
The main point here is that political Hinduism has always sought to project itself as the true secular or plural indigenous ideology as opposed to a fake westernized secularism.
That's right.
didn't understand it completely.
Yeah.
So I wanted to expound
Sure.
on this thing.
And if you ask anybody, if you ask the RSS, for instance, right? Or if you ask Narendra Modi, or if you ask Amit Shah, anybody, they will not say that we are not secular. They will say, actually, as Lal Krishna Advani used to say, actually that secularism is fake. We are saying real secularism. Let the law be the same for everyone. Let all regulations be the same for everyone. That's real secularism. So the argument that political Hinduism has always given is that actually in the name of secularism, we are not getting real secularism. We need to get real secularism. Today I was thinking about this. Somebody, Elon Musk, had tweeted that Bill Clinton deported 12 million illegal people from the country.
When he was the president.
When he was the president. Barack Obama supposedly 3 million. Now Trump has again started, right? Tell me, how many illegals has India ever deported?
Oh, we have brought in more.
So if India says we have illegal people, creating trouble, changing our demographics, then we are the villain. Then if Europe, America, everybody will tell us we are the villain. But in your own country, you're deporting millions of people. What about that? So look at the hypocrisy of it all. So therefore my point that political Hinduism has always argued that the uniformity of laws creates real secularism. So look, my point is that, and there could be people who will say that, oh actually, but they're actually discriminatory, they're just saying it and so on and so forth. That's a political argument and that's valid in its own place, right? I'm only saying as far as narrative is concerned, what they're saying, they will always claim that we believe in pluralism. This is something that both Arun Shawri and L.K. Advani used to say all the time. That we prefer the word plural because we are truly a plural country. This secularism framework has been brought a division between church and state from Europe, and that doesn't fit into our country. So that's my point. I also want to make the point, continuing from my earlier point. See, I have no objection to anybody fair-minded doing research about India. But the fact is, we have to admit that this is very badly skewed. Nothing that we produced is ever accepted by those countries or ever referred to about their country. Whereas we have created a system where we are constantly being validated only, or at least we think we are being validated by them. And this system cannot continue. It's a broken system, right? This is a system of a colonial mind. It is a production of a colonial mind. A deeply colonized mind thinks like this. And we have to stop being colonized here first, right? I mean, I may eat, only Sattvic food and wear only Indian clothes, but if I'm colonized here, it doesn't change anything.
Absolutely.
And I may wear jeans and whatever t-shirt, but I still might be truly, decolonized here.
Yeah.
So we have to be decolonized here first.
Yeah.
And that's important.
No, that's a very brilliant point because these days people are stuck just in the output elements.
Exactly.
And they are not still decolonized.
Exactly.
Because they feel that these elements in a way eventually would decolonize them. But that is not going to happen until and unless it's a conscious.
Exactly. A switch has to go,
Hindol, when you were talking, you mentioned that there is not just a couple of people who were involved in the modern political Hinduism ideology and things that they did. There were many people.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you about one such personality,
Sure.
and I really want people to know about him and go deep into him. Who was Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay? And what was his role in shaping the ideology of Hindutva and also his part in the political Hinduism ideology?
So
let's talk
Bankim
about
Chandra
it.
Chattopadhyay is one of the great pioneering literary figures of India, right? He was, of course, the man who wrote Anandamath.
Yes.
But then he wrote a series of other books.
Could you also tell to the viewers Anandamath, what is it about?
Anandamath is his book that Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay wrote. Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay was employed by the colonial state in Bengal. But in many ways, Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay is also the father of the modern Bengali language, right?
Interesting.
And he was a great, revolutionary writer and, a great literary figure.
Was he Tagore's contemporary?
No. Much before. This is long before Tagore. So Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay writes this book called Anandamath, where he describes this, there's a great famine in Bengal, in those days in colonial. There used to be a lot of great famines, especially in Bengal. And Bankim had seen the famine, from close quarters. So Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay writes this book called Anandamath, which talks about warrior monks in the forests fighting against the state, and not only the colonial state, but also the puppet Nawabs. Remember after Shiraj in Plassey, Shiraj-ud-Dowla and Plassey, Bengal saw a lot of Shiraj-ud-Dowla himself, while he was definitely a patriot and fought the British and so on and so forth. But he was also quite a complex character. There was a lot of atrocities that happened during his time. But the atrocities grew manifold, many, many times over after him with the lesser Nawabs, so to speak, who had little power, but they were despotic and they were very cruel and so on and so forth. In fact, one of the reasons they say that the house of Jagat Seth, the most prominent bankers of that time, actually supported the East India Company against Siraj, because Siraj was so, despotic and in sometimes so cruel. But, again, I have no doubt that Siraj was a patriot, right? And he did fight the British and he definitely wanted to keep the British out. But after Siraj fell, right, there was a series of lesser Nawabs who grew more and more despotic. They would extract huge, produce from the farmers. And that's part of the reason the famines got created and so on and so forth. So Bankim saw all of this, and Anandamath talks about all of this, the extreme hunger, the craziness of that hunger, what it does to human beings. And these monks, these glorious monks who worship the goddess, right, in the forest and fighting back. And these monks, sing Vande Mataram. Yeah. So there is this, wonderful point where there is this absolute desperate person, and right at the end of their hope in a forest, and they don't know what's going to happen. And suddenly they hear this sound in the forest, Vande Mataram, Vande Mataram. See, it gives me goose flesh even as I say it. So it's this incredible adventure story. It's this, this wonderful story. And Bankim then goes on to write a lot of other things, including this treatise on dharma and so on and so forth. So Bankim first mentioned this word Hindutva as the essence of, Hindu life and culture, which he said was the thing that holds the society together, was the thing that helps it fight against tyranny and so on and so forth, right? So that was really important.
And I think Vande Mataram is also something that Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay popularized it and then it became an anthem.
That's right. Anandamath has a Vande Mataram. That's how the revolutionaries in Bengal pick up that Vande Mataram and start singing it. Young men would go to the gallows of the British singing Vande Mataram until they are hung by the British. And then it spread across the country and of course became this great nationalist.
How do you pronounce it? Is it B or is it V? Is it Vande or is it Bande?
Well, it's actually Vande Mataram. But when, non-Bengali speakers say it, it becomes Vande.
Vande.
Yeah.
So he was very pivotal in this entire arc.
He's the pioneer. He's the pioneer, and he's the word who gives us that word also.
And that kind of becomes like a mantra of Poorna Swaraj.
And then of course Chandranath Basu and all these other people, then develop that theory further and write about it and so on. So, and I've mentioned a whole bunch of people in the book.
And very important, very critical, for us to understand, because I feel that a lot of people don't even know Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay, what was his contribution, how they all started. Hindol, now see, again, you have to now help us in explaining some of the more concepts, okay?
Yes.
Let's take a very simple example. Let's take it with respect to the BJP of today.
Yes.
If the BJP's ideology is rooted in Hindutva and taken from the political Hinduism, then what is the ideology of Congress? Why is there always a major tussle between the two parties, and why for such a long time Gandhi and Nehruvian philosophy was prevalent? I want to know.
I wrote this essay in Oxford, which I've also, in some senses given in this book. If you read early Savarkar and early Nehru, if you read Hindutva and Discovery of India, their conception of the nation is near identical.
As in fundamentally.
They're thinking about the nation in very similar ways. There's a great civilization, the civilization has been attacked, then there is, the civilization is made up of all these great pilgrimages, that's how the sacred geography, there's a sacred geography and so on and so forth, right? But of course, they take different turns in politics later, right? And Nehru, of course, goes towards one direction and, Savarkar goes towards another direction. I think it's hard to say what Congress ideology really is because, I think it began out with essentially nationalism, right? Nationalism that sets the country free, develops the country, and so on and so forth. And then it took and there was always, perhaps Nehru himself, there was a sort of left turn in that ideology. See, the Congress at one point used to be this big umbrella party. That had a Nehru also and a Patel also and all kinds of people, right? But after Patel's death in the winter of 1950, the Congress became more and more skewed towards the Nehruvian ideology, which is a sort of mixture of Gandhianism and, of course, socialism,
and Gandhiism is non-violence and unity.
Non-violence, but also Nehru's pet themes. His real love for China and pushing China, and Patel had warned again. I mentioned in my book that Patel had warned that China means no good for us, and so on and so forth. But Nehru, who was a romantic, thought of this great Asiatic, unity and so on and so forth. Look, these were all people who were products of their times. I don't usually get into these, narrow battles that people have on Twitter today. You have to look at a person. See, 70 years later, 60 years later, it's very easy for us to pass judgment on somebody. But as historians, we have to be cognizant of their context. See, for instance, people say, oh, Nehru didn't encourage entrepreneurship and so on and so forth. See, the fact is that, yes, Nehru had a socialist bent of mind. Famously, he told, Jamshedji Tata and others and so on and so forth that profit is a bad word, supposedly, and so on and so forth. Or maybe, did he say it to, no, he said it to, G.R.D. Tata.
G.R.D. Tata.
I think he said to G.R.D., not Jamshedji, sorry. Yeah. G.R.D. Tata, he said that, profit is a bad word. And obviously he could have done more to encourage business people and so on and so forth. I write about this in my book, Recasting India. And Patel was far more involved with the business people because Patel had to raise money for the party, right?
Yes.
Patel was therefore, and Patel, there was a famous quote of Patel where somebody comes to him and says, Gandhiji doesn't like you meeting so many business people. Patel says Gandhiji doesn't like it. He says Gandhiji is a Mahatma. Yeah. I am not a Mahatma. Yes. I am a party boss. I have to run my party. Yeah, if I don't raise money from this, how will this movement run? So I think Nehru had this disdain, this whole Fabian socialist disdain for industry and private capital and so on and so forth. And he wanted to industrialize everything. But also you have to give them one thing. See, India didn't have a lot of private capital at that time. There were some prominent business people, Birlas being one and some others and so on and so forth. But the kind of investment India needed, especially in heavy machinery, infrastructure, building dams, private investment couldn't do. In fact, many private business people came together and told Nehru that the state must take a leading role in this. I think the story becomes more clouded with Indira Gandhi, her nationalizing of the banks and so on and so forth. But again, India was in a very difficult economic situation for a long, long time. It couldn't pay its debts. You'll remember right after the Green Revolution and stuff, it couldn't even feed its people. Yep. So people are products of their time. So therefore, I don't get into this, fight about historical figures in this manner. What I'm interested in is a deeper question that you asked. What is the ideology of the Congress today? And I think the Congress today has taken a sort of particularly left-leaning ideology. But what that actually translates on the ground, it's unclear.
Yes.
So there's a caste census that's been talked of. Okay, that's one idea. Universal basic income. But universal basic income, we're already starting to do. Yep. All these handouts, Ladli Behna, this, that, and the other different states doing. That's a form of universal basic income. And I have long argued that in this transition that we will have to make now, a technological transition, a lot of Indians will need this kind of support, right? And you cannot tell people who are poor, either the state will not support you. That's not possible. And therefore, I have always argued, I wrote a paper about this also in the Observer Research Foundation, when I used to be part of them, that Modi actually, in a sense, is a welfare state person. People always say that, he's only pro-capitalist and so on and so forth. That's not true. His record in Gujarat doesn't show that at all. He is very pragmatic as a Gujarati. He will retain industries that are doing well, which are state-owned, and he will try and get rid of industries that are not doing well. जहां से profit आ रहा है, he will retain them. And he actually understands, I think, that this welfare is needed in India. There's no running away from it. We may say, see, look, at the end of the day, Manrega. I mean, no government has been able to stop Manrega. Because there is a demand on the ground for it. Only the question is, with Manrega, at least my question and many others' question was not that Manrega is needed. What is this labor being used? That's number one. Number two, how much of the money is disappearing? Now the Jam Trinity has fixed that. If today I'm a farmer and I'm part of Manrega or whatever, the direct benefit comes straight to my pocket. There is no middleman. I don't have to go to some Gram Panchayat, this, that, some guy will sign it, he will take 40%, give me 30%, all of that doesn't happen, right? So this theft, this pilferage we wanted stopped. But this kind of support will be required. We are making a big transition once again, primarily agrarian society is moving towards industrialization and stuff. People will need support. There's no running away. And we always say technology, Raghav. You work in technology. Look, it's not possible that with 1.4 billion people, technology will benefit everyone. It's just not possible.
But up to a certain extent it can, right?
In terms of income, they may benefit in other ways.
Indirectly, you're saying it might benefit.
Yeah, it might make your life easier. Like payments has become easier. Right? UPI, beautiful, everybody uses it. A beggar also in India uses UPI now, right? But this transition will mean that some people will, lose jobs and will not have the income and so on and so forth.
Yes.
So a state cannot say, we don't care about this. It's not possible. It's very easy for you and me to say this. We are not in government. Today, if you and I were to sit in government, we cannot say that, okay, these people have lost their jobs, they really need support, they're not being able to afford, inflation is high, leave them all aside. So this welfare, and I think Modi really understands this, that welfare will be required, right? You have to ask the question how productive that welfare will be. That's the big question.
And I think when you're talking about Modi and when you're talking about welfare, one question that you have also tried to tackle in the book is about his popularity. That why he remains popular. And very interesting thing that you have mentioned that even I was aware of, the work that he has done to uplift the Muslim community. That was absolutely brilliant.
If you look at the benefits, right, in drinking water, let's look at some of the direct benefit transfer, drinking water, and Awas Yojana, right? In Uttar Pradesh, especially, large numbers of Muslim people have got it. Very large numbers, right? Large number of people from the Muslim community have got it in the northeast, in Bengal, in many other parts of the country, right? Because these are all broad-based welfare schemes, right? They are not checking for identity and religion and stuff. They are just giving this. And the other thing that I pointed out in the book is women. The women. Sorry, my apologies. The women vote.
The talaq, the triple talaq, the abolition of that.
Yes, absolutely. So, and money in the hands of women. See what used to happen when direct benefit transfers would happen is in the past, men would get the money. Often now, today, if a transfer happens, it goes to a bank account, right? Sometimes the woman is also able to monitor what money is there. So, women's access to overall development has become far more better. So therefore, drinking water supply is a big change. I mean, in India, women had to go, and primarily women had to go long distances. Also, this thing about LPG gas cylinders. Indoor air pollution was one of the worst problems for women in India. So that all of this is added up, and you can see more and more women are voting every passing year, and every Modi victory. Part of the reason has been votes
for female voters.
The
female voters.
The data says that. The data is absolutely clear.
Very clear on that. And they were astonished to know that. And they were like, if you want even more majority and fair elections, you need women to vote.
Correct.
More and more women to vote.
Correct.
Hindul, I want to take you back. Again to the era of Gandhi and Nehru and Savarkar and Ambedkar. One question that really boiled my blood. I mean, I want to ask you a question and please help me. Is this thing... Okay. I cannot wrap my head around the fact Gandhi's support for the Caliphate movement, which you call the Khilafat movement, and also Gandhi's stance on the Mopla riots. I had no idea about the Mopla riots.
Yeah.
I had idea about the Caliphate movement, which became the Khilafat movement. But Mopla riot shook me to my core. And when I read in your book what Gandhi's stance was and what even Ambedkar was saying against him, Hindol, I couldn't wrap my head around how could or can the most important leader of a very sensitive nation governing people who majorly are belonging to one particular faith of Hinduism, how could the representative say that? I could be wrong if even I am asking this question, then how could he say that? Can you please help me understand?
No, and actually it's very difficult to understand. And see, these are the things that spread, right? I mean, you can understand what would be, we would call it in our language today, we would call it trigger. What triggered somebody like Nathuram Godse, right? Something would have triggered him, right? And of course, ideology is one part of the story. But these were all triggers, Gandhi's response to the Mopla riots, and this was all well known. And I mean, Gandhiji had a particular perspective. Perhaps he believed that the majority community had to show extra deference to ensure peace remains, maybe. But to be honest, I also find when I read these quotes and I see what, others were saying, including Ambedkar Sahab was saying, compared to what Gandhiji was saying, it's very disturbing.
Yes.
Right? I mean, Mopla riots, women, children have been massacred. And Gandhiji is saying, if a Hindu just forgave, it would be fine. Sure, but the fact is this has been very disturbing. And for the people who have suffered to hear this from somebody they consider a saint, right, would be very troubling. I mean, imagine if today social media was there, right? I mean, it would be a completely different ballgame. But, I think it is these parts of Gandhiji's actions and behaviors and words are difficult for us to reconcile. The only thing we can think of is that perhaps he really wanted to go the extra mile to bring sort of, reconciliation between communities. But the fact is that never happened.
That never happened, right?
It never happened. And actually the truth of, as they say, the proof of the pudding is in the eating, right?
Mm.
After all of this, was Gandhiji able to keep the country together? The answer is no. No. So this also proves to us that, beyond a point, if you always give in and, surrender to a particular kind of aggression, that may not resolve the situation. You're not helping resolve the situation. You are just escaping from it in a sense and being cowardly. So, these are very disturbing. Or even for me as a historian, these are disturbing truths to face up to. I mean, I mentioned the book that Ambedkar Sahab wrote on Pakistan, or the truth of Pakistan, right?
What was the title of the book?
Pakistan, or the partition, or the Pakistan, or the truth of partition, something like that.
Truth about partition, something like that.
Truth about partition. I forget the exact name. But if you read that book, and you must read that book. I mean, I was also shocked when I first read that book. His views about Pakistan were so stark.
Yep.
And he saw Islamic radicalism in such stark terms,
yes.
Right? And it was really disturbing. I mean, this doesn't mean that Ambedkar Sahab said all good things about Hinduism. Of course, he didn't. As you know, he was a bitter critic, and famously said,
denounced it, no?
Yeah, he said,
adopted Buddhism.
At the end of the day, I was born a Hindu, but I will not die a Hindu. All of this is true. Look, we as historians, we have to face facts the way they are. Yeah. Some we may like, some we may not like. But the truth is what it is, right? But people forget, he was also very clear-eyed about Islamic radicalism, right? And Ambedkar Sahab was perhaps the first person, and Patel was perhaps the second, who saw that this negotiation with Jinnah will not work. What Gandhiji is trying to do, it will not work. And it didn't, right? Right up to the end, I mentioned in the book that, Sardar Patel had wanted, when 55 crores from the Indian treasury had to be paid by Pakistan, and the first attacks had already begun. Sardar Patel had wanted the Pakistani side to be brought to a table, thrashed out, and the money paid.
Yeah.
But everybody objected. Panditji objected, Maulana Azad objected, everybody objected, and that also I think Patel Sahab could have countered. But at the end of the day, Gandhiji went on a fast. Yeah. So when Gandhiji went on a fast, end of story, the money was paid. Imagine if that deal would have been cracked at that time. Then okay, this is the final border, this is yours, this is ours, end of story, here's the money. Imagine, India would have been saved from 70 years of pain.
But Hindul, then this again, which I have also written a question, and I'm going to just ask you directly, which again I fail to understand. Despite the clear theoretization that Gandhi did, he was not able to achieve, even post his death, what he wanted to achieve. What I really fail to understand is how did the philosophy of Gandhi and Nehru's non-violence, of having unity, could overpower the opinions of likes of Ambedkar, Savarkar, even sometimes Patel.
Yeah, so there is an answer to that as far as Gandhi and non-violence is concerned, and the answer to me is very simple. You see, Gandhiji was a product of a time when the world had seen unprecedented violence. You forget that the two world wars happened, and the Second World War ended with the atomic bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The world had seen violence at a scale that had never been seen in the history of humankind. Human history had never seen violence of this kind ever. So therefore, I feel at that moment, a non-violent figure was very, very attractive to many, many people in India and around the world.
Yeah, that's what I want to ask you. Was that attractive for the world politics and scenario?
But also for India, I think. Because in India also, I think a lot of people, especially the Indian elites, had also seen the war. I mean, in the First World War, for instance, as a lot of Indian soldiers died. Yeah. So that war scenario was impacting everyone, right? And they had seen that Subhas Chandra Bose, army came, it failed, and so on and so forth. So I think non-violence was very attractive to that generation, especially, of course, outside India, but even within India, the elites, there was. Had Patel lived on, I think it would have been different. Please remember, any challenge and counter-narrative also stopped, right? Patel died at the end of 1950. After that, Nehru was the supremo of the country and the party. Yeah. And Nehru faced his first real challenge when the war was ended. The war with China ended badly and India lost, right? And then, of course, he was alive only for a little while after that. But because had Patel lived on, I think a real counter-narrative would have been built. Had Patel lived on till the 1960s, I really think a counter-narrative could have got constructed. But his passing, of course, then. And then, of course, Gandhian socialism and Nehruvian socialism.
So because I think Patel's death, Nehru had everything on his head. And he was the sole decision maker, the way he wanted to. Yeah. And I think his own theory and philosophy was completely taken from Gandhiji's. And that is why he overlooked the invasion of China.
To a degree. But remember, Nehru never agreed with Gandhi on Pakistan because Patel and Nehru actually went against Gandhi. That's why when partition happened, Gandhiji was completely isolated. Because his own party had refused to listen to him. Right? They had refused to give in to Jinnah's final demands. And Patel and Nehru, albeit late, realized that you can never convince Jinnah. Today it's this, tomorrow it will be something else. Right? And Patel and Nehru primarily refused. I mean, they refused their guru, so to speak, because he was really like their father figure, guru and whatever. They refused to listen to him, and that's why partition happened. And Gandhiji, till the end, did not accept partition. But it was done by his own acolytes, by his own disciples, right? They broke with Jinnah and the country was partitioned. So, Gandhiji was isolated at that time.
Now, Hindol, there is another highlight that I have taken from a book. This is from page 32 to 33 because this was so powerful. I had to even mention the page number. It goes like this. The destruction of a mosque built by Babur at a sacred Hindu site forms a critical part of the history of political Hinduism.
Yeah.
For now, it is important to note that the rebuilding of sacred shrines and sites after Islamic iconoclastic destruction forms an important part of the ideological impetus of political Hinduism. Why I specifically highlighted, this is what we're seeing today.
Yeah.
This is the only thing which I see in continuation of the ideologies of what has happened. So please help me in dissecting this thing. Why, Hindol, is it important for us to correct what was done in the past?
Yeah. So
and specific to these architectural instances.
So I think, it's number one, we cannot correct everything. That's not possible. Right? That's a fool's game. You will never, there's no end to it, right? Number two, we are also not in a place where we want civil war in the country. Because every village, everything, and people misuse these things also, not to create conflict and so on and so on. However, I think 2 or 3 main things, which was always the original demand: Mathura, Kashi, and
So,
Ayodhya.
Ayodhya. Yeah.
Right? These were 3 main places where the holiest of holy shrines of the Hindus, where the desecration was very apparent. You go to Kashi, you see what has happened there. No one can, nobody has to tell you what happened.
You don't need evidence. It's very.
No, in Mathura, everybody knows what has happened here, right? I think that if, communities can come together and come to a solution, right? I think that's very healthy. Ayodhya, I'm really glad it happened by the legal route. The Muslim side clearly was given a separate piece of land to build whatever they wanted to build. And of course, the Ram temple has got built, which is fine. It had to go through a legal route because I am never a believer that any of this can be done by society and through mob violence and stuff. This is the wrong approach. I think we have to take a constitutional legal approach to this. The way surveys were done, remember in the Ayodhya case, of course, there was a Muslim archaeologist who gave us some of the best examples, right?
Who defended the claim.
And, K.K. Mohammed, right?
Yes.
So, this is the right way to do this. I do think that if 1 or 2 of these issues we can sort out peacefully and legally, it would be very peaceful for the history of this country. But look, I am not, some people say, every single instance we will correct. If that's the approach, and if people start to do that, this is an unending stream of conflict. And please remember, any country that has an unending stream of internal conflict can never hope to grow and prosper. Yeah. It's not possible. It just cannot happen.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're so consumed by that internal conflict. Right? So I do think, like I said, 2 or 3 main examples we should amicably sort out legally with archaeological evidence and surveys and stuff. If we can sort out, I think we should go forth with a certain degree of peace in this country.
But Hindol, my question is that it's always about the supply and demand.
Yeah.
Who is to say and what is a guarantee that even after we reclaim these 3 sacred sites and rebuild it in the way that we imagine and as they were, the demand won't be there? And because the supply has to be there so that the suppliers could be in the place of governance.
No, that's the thing is, which is why this Places of Worship Act was also put in place. If you read the Places of Worship Act, there is a sense that there are historical wrongs cannot be righted infinitely like this, and you can't keep revising. Today, then every person who comes to power after that will say, "Oh, but then this was done, so now I will break it again and build something else." This is an endless game. We have to be sensible about these things, right? I think 2 or 3 big things we should amicably sort out so that all sides relatively are peaceful and go happy. But we should really focus. We are not going to become Vishwaguru by endlessly raking up the past. We are going to become Vishwaguru by looking at the future and building things for the future. So therefore, if we really want to build, like for instance, I'm very impressed, for instance, in Vrindavan, a Chandrodaya Mandir is being built. The world's first skyscraper temple.
What is a skyscraper?
It's a really, really tall. So when Srila Prabhupada went to America, he saw all these skyscrapers, right? Yeah. And he said, well, he always wanted whatever's the best should come to Krishna, right? Should be offered to Krishna. Yeah. So he said, well, why can't a temple be skyscraper? So a skyscraper temple is being built in Vrindavan.
So as you speak, it's
yes, it's called the Chandrodaya Mandir.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it's being built and it's and if you want, I'll be happy to connect you to the people who are building it.
Oh, yes.
So things like that. If we really want to build, we should build. That's my point, right? We want to build great things. Let us build great things. We shouldn't constantly look at the past and constantly get embroiled in incessant battles. Like I said, 2, 3 big things we should amicably solve. Legally, I say again and again legally, because people might misunderstand that this is some mob justice. No, it should never be mob justice. We're a democracy. We cannot do things like that. We should always take the legal route
that we took in the case of the Ayodhya Ram.
Exactly, and there should be a judgment which clearly, makes space for and accommodates every community, and then we can, Ross is also on these problems.
Hindol, was Advani the one who really started the Ayodhya movement? can we give him the sole credit for initiating that?
So the conflict in Ayodhya and the Babri Masjid has been going on for a long time.
Yeah.
A lot of colonial records also talk about that. In the contemporary sense, yes, his Rath Yatra really started.
As written in the book, that it was really.
His Rath Yatra started the movement for sure. That we can.
So a lot of credit could be given. I think very slightly you had also mentioned about the role of the Shiv Sena when Balsa, Thackeray said that yes, we also had sent. But that you also mentioned it's not clear or it's not confirmed. It's unclear. Because he gave that in a public, I think in Aapki Adalat when he went and he said that.
That's right.
कि हमारा हाथ में पैर भी था. That's very funny.
But Bala Thackeray used to say things like this. Yeah. But it's hard for me to make a 100% judgment.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's fair. Okay. Yeah. Now there is another highlight, Hindol, because your book is filled with very powerful words, extremely powerful. Savarkar had never cared much for Gandhi and was lucid in his criticism.
Yeah.
The government has nothing to fear while the Congress is led by men like Gandhiji, who have been, as I am aware, not only pro-government but sincerely pro-English throughout their lives. I found it very hysterical. It was very direct and a very funny way to voice his opinion.
So Savarkar, of course, felt all this non-violence and stuff wouldn't work, and this was basically playing to British hands and so on and so forth. And that was his point of view.
But Hindol, is it a speculation or is it a fact that yes, Gandhi was just playing by the British hand?
No, I don't think it's a fact. I mean, I think, please remember, to begin with, India was only asking for dominion status.
Achha, it was never Poorna Swaraj. It was
no.
But that was given to us by Chris proposal, right?
Yeah, but that was later. To begin with, the Congress party, even before Gandhiji, was not asking for Poorna Swaraj. It was asking for dominion status.
Interesting.
And dominion status with more rights, whatever, right? Yeah. So, in that sense, you can say that, this was from day one we should have asked for. But look, I mean, again, these are historical things. You cannot, at that time, people felt that, okay, at least people get something. Nobody anticipated that the Raj will suddenly end like this. They thought, okay, within this, what is the best we can get? So, again, this revisionist history that we say, okay, now we 100% know this would have been better. I mean, who knows, right? But the fact is, yes, to begin with, there was an idea that, we should push the British to give us more within the framework. And then, of course, at one point, this Poorna Swaraj, especially after, the killings of General Dyer and so on and so forth. This entire thing of Poorna Swaraj came into being. But yeah, to begin with, our demand was within the framework.
Hindol,
and that perhaps Savarkar didn't like.
Yeah, I mean, there were clear differences. Absolutely clear differences.
No, that's true.
Hindol, we have been talking about our need and our hunger for validation by Western validators, apparently in a lot of aspects of our country's parameters and verticals.
Yes.
For example, let's say, and you have been saying that yes, it is people like you and me who need to really work out a process.
Yes.
Wherein we don't want to rely on those validations. If I ask you, what are the top 5 things that me as a citizen of this country, and I'm not talking as a Hindu or a Muslim or Christian, as a citizen, because all these people have a shared history with India, right?
Yes.
They are a part of India. If I ask you, give me some 3-4 pointers of things that I can start doing today to ensure that we are not begging for validation. What are the things that we could do?
Well, one simple thing I always say is that learn Sanskrit.
Brilliant.
You have to learn and read your own texts in the language in which it was written. You cannot depend on other people to translate your text for you. So every individual, and that doesn't mean you and I or every person will become a great Sanskrit scholar, no. But you should have the basic ability that if a page written in Sanskrit is given in front of you, you should be able to read it. If tomorrow you pick up the Rig Veda or the Upanishads or whatever, you pick it up, you'll be able to read it. Now, understanding it, getting all the profundity, all of that is later. At least you should be able to read it. So that one fundamental thing, I think. The other thing I would say is learn more Indian languages. That's the only way you will feel, can connect the country, right? One of the things that Ramakrishna Mission monks do, and many monks, not just them, and of course RSS people also do, is that they know more than one Indian language. You will often find somebody from Gujarat in the RSS will know Tamil fluently. Why? Because they used to work in Tamil Nadu for a long time. So learn more Indian languages, apart from, of course, your birth language, which could be Hindi or Gujarati or whatever.
Is it because you feel that if I do learn or get myself acquainted with the regional languages, I can understand the history of that region?
And a whole culture opens up to you, right? You will be able to watch the movies and listen to the song. I mean, it's so sad that we understand so little of Carnatic music.
Yeah.
I mean, I love Carnatic music, but I cannot mostly understand what they're saying.
It's restricted to a specific belt.
I would love to understand the poetry that is being sung, right? If you understood Bangla, you would be able to understand what Tagore wrote.
And the richness that is there in that culture.
Yes, and you would be able to listen to not just Rabindra Sangeet, which is beautiful, but you would also be able to read Tagore in the original language.
And I would be able to watch Apu trilogy without
And
subtitles.
you would be able to watch, of course, Satyajit Ray and Apu trilogy and all without subtitles. So therefore, I always see, I watch a lot of Marathi films, right?
Interesting.
Because I used to live in Bombay, so I got, understood a little bit of Marathi. I don't follow everything, but I follow enough and I understand enough. So I want to watch a lot of Marathi films, which are great fun. And I've loved it, and I would love to, like Gujarati, I've begun to follow because I go a lot to Gujarat and I've understood a little bit. But I would love to one day learn Kannada, right? Or Tamil or Malayalam, right? To understand the richness that comes in that. So we should really encourage this cross-pollination of languages in our country. Every Indian child should be encouraged to learn at least one more language beyond their mother tongue. So if my mother tongue is Bengali, I learn Hindi and one more language, to get them acquainted to the richness of India's culture.
So learning Sanskrit and understanding Sanskrit, the basic, at least reading,
and
understanding more languages.
Yeah. And the third, I think, very important is that, we have cut away, even in your parent generation and my parent generation, people would always have a little bit of inner life. Ghar pe mandir hoti thi. Yeah, you would go to a nearby temple, you would have a guru at home, or you would invite monks. We have become a particular generation which has become completely separated from any inner life. This is a great tragedy. That's why in moments of crisis, Indians go crazy and kill themselves and so on and so forth. We should bring that back. See, rituals, and for a long time I also didn't, think very highly of rituals. But today I feel that rituals are very important. That 2 minutes that you spend in front of an altar lighting one candle or one agarbatti, it's a moment of an inner life for you. It's a solace. We should encourage that. Teach children meditation.
As per their faith, right?
Yeah, whatever.
Practices as per their faith.
Whatever. You're a Christian, you light a candle in front of the altar of Christ, right? You're a Muslim, you take that time off on a Friday, you go and do the namaz, right? Whatever it is that you do, you should have some inner life in your life.
Very important.
That's very important. Because remember, your real strength doesn't come from even your family. It comes from within you. And I would believe that only God can give you that strength. But if you have no interface with the divine, if you cut away all interface, if all your life is work and, having fun and your mobile phone, then you have no inner life. That's why we are so disturbed these days in India and around the world actually. Yeah. We must cultivate an inner life.
Hindol, I think I would like to add one more point to this thing. And I would want you to explain this thing. Please. Because I think I want people to also understand this thing. I want you to explain a term that you have invented and that you have used is Indo-futurism.
Yeah, sure.
Explain Indo-futurism, and do you think that could also be the fourth point for the youth to understand? And
so I'm writing a book on Indo-futurism.
What is Indo-futurism?
Indo-futurism is just this idea that India has always been, not just today, a hub of great technological advancement. I'll give you a couple of examples.
Yes, let's take the examples.
If you read the history of the Crusades, you will read about Saladin's sword, Emperor Saladin and his sword, made of Damascus steel.
Yeah.
The sword so sharp it could cut a human being into half, but which could be bent into half. Yeah. So
without breaking.
Without breaking. But Damascus steel wasn't created in Damascus.
No.
Damascus steel was actually created in Andhra Pradesh.
Yes.
It is the metallurgy of India, which is why the iron pillar where you're sitting in Delhi,
Ashok,
the Qutub Minar, that stump, iron pillar, it is still not rusted. Hundreds of years. Yeah. How is that possible? So this is a technological advancement. I was telling you about that muslin cloth.
Yes.
That thread count, we have still not achieved. It was, I think, 120 or whatever, some very high. No, I think 1200 thread count or whatever, something like that. But that fine cloth, we still don't know how to make. In fact, let me tell you a story about Dhakai muslin. It is said that one of the daughters of Aurangzeb was wearing 7 layers of Dhakai muslin. And the emperor looked at her and said, "How dare you come out naked?" But she was not naked. She was wearing 7 layers of Dhakai muslin.
I can't even imagine.
Can you imagine?
No, because it's not there right now, right?
Yeah.
It's very hard to imagine.
Maybe it wasn't Aurangzeb, maybe it was a different Mughal emperor, but and I can't remember the exact Mughal emperor right now. Perhaps it was Aurangzeb, perhaps it was somebody else. But there was a Mughal emperor whose daughter was wearing 7 layers, and somebody said, he said, "Oh, you're naked. How dare you come out like this?" But she wasn't. So imagine how fine that was. That's why Pliny the Elder says it's cloth which is like a wisp of smoke, dhua jaisa, right? So
it's very hard to imagine that
it's very hard to imagine.
Technologically possible or not.
So we obviously had this kind of technology, and we had the prowess of this kind of technology, and therefore I think there are a lot of technological advancements that we were, like for instance, Shushrut, right? Rhinoplasty, which is you take the skin from the nose. That cosmetic surgery, it is widely accepted. It began in India.
Father of surgery.
Yeah.
Now people can.
It began in India, perhaps in Kerala or somewhere. The first rhinoplasty and cosmetic surgery was done in India, right? So all of this we had. So therefore, Indians should really think of their future as technology that India gave to the world and will still give to the world.
So this is something that we can replicate. Yes. This is something that can come back again. This was in our DNA.
Yeah, which is why, I'm always thinking about how we can take our ancient wisdom and couple that with technology, modern technology, and create products which could be, it would seem like magic, but it would only be technology.
And do you think that somewhere or the other, things like yoga, yoga, meditation, have in a way, do you also think, Hindu, that such soft power things like yoga, meditation, hatha yoga and all these things can also power the political Hinduism ideology? Can it be used or linked in a way?
So I have a feeling that we should dissociate these things. Because everything, if you connect to politics, right?
It gets a bad name.
And everything shouldn't even be connected to religion. These are, I would say, common cultural heritage for all Indians.
And of this nation.
Of this nation. Let any Indian do it. Right? I mean, Dhakai muslin was made by some of the finest weavers, Muslim weavers, right, of that time. Let a Muslim entrepreneur pick it up today and show us that this can be done again. Amazing, right? So, this is a common heritage, I would say, of all people in India. And let us work together to collectively take leaps of imagination and faith that would take the country forward. And that's the vision of Indo-futurism. And I'm going to write, I am writing a book about this, and hopefully...
No, very powerful. I think this is very powerful. So I'm going to just sum up the 4 pointers actually.
Yeah.
Sanskrit, languages. Third is the Indo-futurism. And one more, Hindol, you said was important, I'm forgetting right now. Third point you said, very critical.
What was it?
Yeah.
I've said so many things.
Anyways, the video was very important. Very important. The Sanskrit part was really nice. The language part, I never thought that you would say languages.
Yeah.
It was
very important.
Yeah, I think we have covered all the great questions, Hindol.
Amazing.
Because, sequences may the, but then you answered.
Lots of stuff.
Lots of stuff, right? So we have actually
amazing.
Came up to the...
No, this was an amazing conversation. Thank you very much. I loved it. Thank you very much. I'm very privileged that you've taken so much interest in my work. I'm very privileged that you read the book. And thank you to you and all your team members for coming all the way to my home. Thank you very much.
This is just a start of an association.
I really hope and pray that's true. Thank you so much for coming by. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Hindol.
Thank you
so much.
Thanks a lot.